Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are watching. This is Zuzana Mukumai from Intercultural Relationships Celebrate Your Differences. And today I am going to talk to Marta, who is originally from Poland but lives in UK, and she is an expat coach. Hello, Marta. I'm so excited that you are here today.
Hello, hello. Great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, thank you for your time. And before we jump into the question about expat life, about living abroad, can you tell us a bit more about yourself, who you are, what is your story?
Yeah. Oh, the story, I can make it longer, I can make it short. What do you want?
Something in between.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. So I'm Marta, yes. Kind of got used to people calling me Marta in the UK because they just can't pronounce the R very often. So I'm kind of going with that as well. I'm originally from Poland, studied there, grew up there, went to uni there, and then decided I want to see the big world. I was always sort of curious what else is out there, and I've been a part of many like intercultural exchanges locally. I've been part of the choir. At my university, we were organizing different exchanges, so I was always close to like and really curious about like what else is out there in the world. And I decided after uni, I want to do that as well. And I was lucky enough to do that with my partner, who also was sort of open to that kind of adventure at the time. And we wanted to move for 2, maximum 3 years, then go back to Poland. I was 100% convinced about that. And then we've been here 7 years now, nearly. So that's how it goes. And I live in London. Professionally, I've been doing lots of different HR roles, starting with recruiting, administration, moving through global mobility. So I've transferred hundreds and hundreds of people in and out of London as well. So it was really interesting for me to see the different stories that people have and the different challenges that they face on a sort of both logistical but also adaptation level when they join sort of the same company, but it's a different office, it's a different environment and a different challenge. Yeah, now I'm in people and culture team still, in a scale up company in London. So I've changed slightly from the corporate world into slightly smaller company just to also see the different way of working. So I work a lot with Danish people right now, which was kind of new for me. So it's also a learning curve at the moment.
Okay, that's so exciting, and I love how there are people who are never kind of interested to travel. They maybe travel just in between, like in the country, and there are people like us who kind of felt drawn to travel to discover. So it's interesting. Like you end up in London, and life happened instead of 3 years. It's now 7 years. So let me ask you, what were your biggest challenges to adapt into like in a new life in a new country, and was there something specific as somebody from Poland moving to UK which you had to consider, which you had to get used to?
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, for me personally, you might be surprised, but it was the language that made it quite hard to adjust. I was moving already knowing English, and I was learning English at school, and now I went to school with international baccalaureate. So I was like, I thought I can speak English. Yeah. Like, I was like, if anything's going to be a problem, that's not going to be the language. I get it. Like, I understand what people talk. But accents is not necessarily something you get taught at school, um, or exposed to in Poland, especially. Like, even though my teachers were really good, right, and they've taught us a lot. They had the Polish accents. They didn't expose us that much to that native speaking environment, etc. We didn't travel here or anything, so it was a bit challenging at the beginning for me to understand the different references to the local culture or the TV shows or the TV stars, and just the accents as well. Where, like, I remember one time I had to call a like a phone line to sort something around logistics of moving, like some sort of permit or whatever. And I got to a phone line in Scotland. I've never had exposure to Scottish accent, and oh my gosh, I almost cried on this phone. I just couldn't, because how many times you can say, "Oh, sorry, could you repeat?" "Oh, sorry, I didn't get that." How many times can you do that and not feel like a complete idiot? Um, so for me, that was quite challenging at first, and also the speed at which the business was happening in terms of the language as well. In my company, it was a consulting company. I worked at McKinsey, so big corporate, lots of different discussions. I was lucky enough, actually, I would say now, but also it was a challenge to work with a lot of British people on the team, and so they didn't necessarily consider that I might not get all of it that's being said. So that kind of thing was at the beginning, like the first few weeks, months maybe, super challenging for me. So I really needed to shift away from that identity of like, I can speak English, so like that's not a problem, to I'm still learning, actually, in fact, and that was a difficult shift. At the moment, I didn't get it, that it's about identity in a way, but now I know. So yeah, that was one of those.
Yeah,
Eh, mhm.
you can go ahead.
Yeah, and then I guess the second one would be just around the ways of working, like the amount of times I've heard like I need to maybe tone it down a little. Like I used to be very direct in how generally I communicate, but also give feedback, and um, and that was quite a shift I had to make, and quite a challenge that I faced with working with British people, that I found is they're not as direct. In fact, I didn't really get my first feedback when I got it from my manager, because it was a story, like it was, I think, maybe second month of me being here, and we had a chat of like, how is it going? Am I happy with the job and the role, and how am I adapting and all of this? And she said to me, well, like, yes, you're doing a wonderful job, typical sandwich kind of style feedback. Like, you're doing a great job. This is wonderful. You've done this well. You might want to think about X, but overall, all good. So I came out of that conversation feeling like super happy. I'm like, 2 months in, I'm doing a great job. My manager's happy, like amazing. And then a few weeks later, she comes up to me and be like, "You didn't really address this thing that we talked about, didn't we?" And I'm like, "What thing?" "Oh, this thing." And then that was the might want to think about. And I was like, okay, so might want to think about, noted. That means do it. So these kinds of subtle things you need to learn. So that was difficult as well, and also was not well perceived when I was direct in my communication necessarily in presentations and in meetings. So needed to tone that down quite a bit as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I can relate because Czech Republic, Poland, we are quite similar. And actually, I just talked to Christina, who is from Germany, and I think these three countries we are very similar in being direct. And yeah, I also used to have British colleagues, and I always say it's so nice to work with British people because in the meetings they are much more positive, and Czech people are like, no, this could be better, this could be better. And then the British people, as you said, it's wonderful, and maybe you can change this. So I completely relate to that. It's funny. And the second thing what I wanted to say about, as you were talking about the challenge in language, I found it quite interesting because I focus on intercultural relationships. So many of women I work with, they live abroad as well. And more often, I hear the challenge is that they are not confident in the language, that they feel they don't speak well enough, or their accent is not good enough. Meanwhile, you said like you were very confident, and then you had to change your identity to realize that you are learning. So I find that interesting.
Yeah,
And I
and
want
now
to
I'm
ask,
sort of shifting that narrative, and also with people I work with, it's kind of like, see, I thought I knew English, and I still had to make some adjustments. So it's not just, let's ditch that. We need to be perfect in the language. We really don't. Like, as long as we can communicate, it's fine. And that was a shift I needed to make. So I'm helping people make that shift now as well.
yeah. Yeah, I think I did a similar shift when I lived in Italy for about 3 months. I came to Italy. I spoke zero Italian. I just learned one sentence like, hello, I'm looking for a job. Then I got a job. And then I had to start speaking Italian. And at that time, the Italians were looking at me a bit like through the fingers because my Italian was terrible. I couldn't communicate properly. But then I realized, like, what am I doing? I am the only one here in the bar where I was working who actually speaks more than one language. So as you said, like, we can just ditch the desire for perfection because it will never be our native language, and the important thing is that we communicate.
Exactly. And the important thing is like to appreciate also how much you already know. As you said, like you speak more than one language. So like it's obviously not going to be great in all the languages that you speak in like native sort of level, right? Necessarily if you started learning them when you were 20 or however many years old. But the key is to be able to communicate. And the fact that you can communicate in two languages actually gives you more opportunities. As for me personally, it was that ability to build better connections with our teams in Poland. I was working a lot with the teams in Poland. Poland is big for shared service centers, and we had one there. So we had a support team out of Poland. And actually, I found myself being asked to do lots of things with them and like work with them and coordinate just because of that language fluency and ease in communication. Which others found difficult because again the directness and whatnot. So it can be a benefit if we just look for the benefits in the situation, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mentioned earlier on that you are an expat coach. So I wanted to ask, um, what are the most common challenges you talk with your clients about moving abroad? So what are the most common ones, and what would be your tips how to overcome them?
I think I'd say the most common ones are the ones around not logistics, right? So people when they move abroad, and that's from my experience as a global mobility person, right, transferring people away, and then just my short, still very at the beginning of my coaching journey. I think it's the non-logistical stuff that throw us off, is the sort of overwhelm that many of us experience of the emotions, like what's going on, the overwhelm of the new stuff, the new stimuli, the amount of stuff that we need to sort of understand and process, and it can be quite tiring. And it's also the overwhelm of expectations, I think, that we put on ourselves, but also others put on us, in terms of, when you go back home to visit your family, like you need to visit all of them, and you come back from holidays more tired than you even went there. Like it's just something that you need to be able to manage, like the boundaries of how you communicate with others as well who are close to you. So I think things like that, and it's not the logistics, even though people very often think that it is, like how do you find a visa, how do you find a home, like it's obviously you need to sort that out when you move. But I think I only see people only when it hits them what comes next, I think. And I wish more people tried coaching or tried some mentoring before they actually moved, and that they put the non-logistical stuff on their to-do lists as well. So that they do really take care of their self-care. They do take the time to like educate themselves on emotions and building that resilience upfront, so that they can avoid some of the pitfalls straight when they move, and they can manage their energy a bit better. We all have to go through the ups and downs. That's called life, whether you're in your home country or abroad. So just, being realistic about this. But I think we can help ourselves a lot more than we do generally when we move abroad. So I'd say the overwhelm of things would be the biggest challenge. And then what is it that you're overwhelmed of? That differs very much per person.
And if we would simplify things, and you were to say, what are the three things somebody who just moved to a different country and she feels overwhelmed and maybe lost or questioning the decision, what would be the three things you would tell her, like what she can do?
Interesting question. Only three? Okay. I
You
would
can do
say,
more.
it's all good. I would say, first thing, look after yourself and your needs in the whole process, before, during the move, and straight after. So I really encourage people to tap into what they need, right? And tap into their emotions, because emotions are information, is how I like to call it. Even if they're not quite comfortable, their information. So tapping into that and responding to that is something that I work with people on, right? So that we know that, okay, this means it's enough. I don't have to go to that other meetup or meeting with other people or integration or whatever that is. Like that's enough of me trying to make friends in a new country. I need that night at home, for example, right? So that you don't have to constantly meet these expectations of what you should be doing or you feel like others feel like you should be doing, right? I think that kind of separation or learning to separate what are your needs and expectations towards the move versus what are others' expectations is going to be an important skill to learn. And then another sort of piece of my work that I do, and I think it's super important for people when they move, and for women especially, I think important because we do have that. I do feel we do have that special, like empathy, many of us within us already, and I think it maybe is even easier for many of us as women to actually understand the cultural differences and dimensions. Like I try to put a bit more structure on cultural dimensions through the assessments that you can do to sort of find out like how the culture shaped you, like what are the differences that you're facing right now. Put a name to what you're experiencing sometimes helps. So if you're looking for something specific and you're quite a structured person, you might benefit from doing that self-assessment on cultural values to see how your culture of your home country or your upbringing sort of shaped you, and how does that clash or doesn't clash with the culture that you're in currently. And you can put some names and some words to the differences that you're experiencing, you know, whether it's a hierarchical society versus more flat structure and better direct or indirect communication. And having a bit more conversation about that, I think would be one of my tips for those of us who are a bit more structured and need that kind of frame and language to be able to talk about what's going on with them.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I like the idea of putting the names on the things we are experiencing and feeling, because I am, in a way, I am very structured person, but also on the other hand, I'm very unstructured person. So in the past, I always, when I went to a new country or when I moved to Africa, I didn't think about it. I just like dived in. And actually, I think at that time it could have been useful to name the things, because you are all like, you're seeing it, you are experiencing it, but you don't put the name on it. So it's kind of interesting to realize that, oh, this is the thing, this thing described in the book is actually what I have been experiencing, and I can learn from that. So I like that tip.
Yeah.
And generally, I would agree. Like you are a coach, and you mentioned that it would be great for people to have a coach by their side, even as they are moving. I completely agree that I can't imagine my own life without having my own coach as well right now, because I think it's so beneficial and you are not alone. But I don't know how is it in Poland, but in Czech Republic now it's changing. But I think our generation grew up in a way that coaching was not very common. It's something not very familiar, and people kind of look at it often that it's just talking. So I don't know if you had similar experience with maybe your clients, or how people look at coaching, and if this is changing. I was not planning to ask this question, but I thought it's interesting to bring it up, because maybe there are some women watching and they were thinking how coaching can be useful. So maybe you have some tips or something you want to share about it.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to what you've said. I think there is a bit of, I mean, not no longer stigma, I would say, but that apprehension towards coaching. People not quite sure what that is, but it's also because, I mean, if we're talking Poland specifically, I think it's because there's a lot of like motivational speakers who call themselves coaches. So that line of what coaching really is as a tool, because I consider it to be a tool, right? It's just one of the tools that we use. And very often when I talk to people coaching, when I say coaching program, it doesn't always have to be just pure coaching in terms of the tools that we use. We may use some of the assessments, for example, and then some report discussion. So it isn't always pure coaching, if you will. So I would encourage people to sort of dig and read into what coaching is versus what it isn't. And I can tell you that it is in motivational speeches. I mean, motivational speeches are great, right? But coaches have to have a certain qualification, right, or be ICF based, maybe some higher accreditations as well. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and there's a lot of sort of rules you can follow to make sure that your coach is a qualified coach and is just not someone who just like decided that they're going to be a coach one day. Like, I have a master's in psychology as well, so like I come from the psychology background. I decided not to be a therapist after I finished uni. I went into HR, working in corporate, but that knowledge is still with me, right? So I guess what I'm also wary about is that, you know, sometimes coaching is not the best tool. Sometimes maybe therapy would be better. So if we're able to, or if your coach is able to spot these things and be like, you know what, actually coaching is very future focused. It's not, you know, solving problems. It's not necessarily dealing with mental health illnesses, right? Then maybe you do need a diagnosis for something else and a different type of help from a psychologist, from a therapist. So just having those conversations openly and knowing what every person and every specialist can help you with, I think is important, right? And what I consider coaching, where I consider coaching to be helpful, is when someone is already sort of ready for the change. They don't have any like illnesses holding them back necessarily. Very often coaching and therapy can go hand in hand, and dealing with different sort of aspects of your life and challenges. So there's a lot of ways in which we can work with that. And I think there's definitely needs to be some more education around it, I think, in Poland, but it is changing for the better. In a way as well. I think what I'm seeing with therapy, a lot more people, especially after the pandemic, they sort of got convinced that, you know, maybe they do need some help and support, and I think it's changing for the better. So people are reaching out, and that's great.
Yeah, and because people are so different, so it's everybody also kind of needs with different type of person, and that's completely fine. That somebody looks for the coach with the highest accreditation, but I also know coaches which have no accreditation and they are very, very good. And sometimes it can be combination coaching and mentoring, especially in the business or the relationships. And sometimes it's I would say, I don't want to say just because it's so important, but sometimes it's just knowing that there is somebody believing in you when you don't believe in yourself. And that is so important, I think, to have somebody by your side who know that you can do it even when you are not sure if you can do it. And especially when you are in the midst of the challenges, like moving to different country or moving into a different country with a partner from different country. So that brings me to next question, actually. Is did you come across some challenges, unless in your personal life or in your coaching practice, when women, they move to a new country with a partner who is from different country, or maybe they move together, or any combination possible? But basically what I want to ask is if there is something to pay attention to when you move to a new country with your partner.
Mm-hmm. So from my personal story, I moved with my partner, who is also Polish. So we were together already before we decided to move. So that was kind of like a common decision for both of us. I guess the challenge that I've experienced with that is that I moved from Poland to the UK while changing roles within my company that I was working at before. So I applied internally for a role, and it all happened very quickly, maybe too quickly even. So that's the overwhelm that we talked about. I've been there, done that. Because basically I've defended my thesis on 1 June morning. Then the same afternoon I went to London for my for my final round interview. And then 2 days later, I had an offer in hand. 3 weeks later, I had to start that job in London. So I had like 3 weeks basically to pack up my life and move. While my partner had a 3 months notice from his current job. So we weren't quite on the same timeline at that point. So I moved slightly earlier than he did, like done all the logistics and, arranging a flat and all of that for us. So we were apart for about a month and a half, which at that point was the longest we've ever been apart. So I know for some of you, especially now after pandemic, it's just, it sounds like nothing, right? At the time for me, it was a big thing because we haven't been apart from that for that long ever. And we were together for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years at that point, I think. So what helped us, I think, and what I would recommend, as cheesy as it sounds, it is to communicate, like really to say what's going on with us. Like I think that's what saved us in a way, because we were really on a different timeline. I was already in that honeymoon period, adaptation, learning about the new place. He was still in Poland. He didn't follow, he didn't understand everything that was happening. So I needed to put the extra effort. Like we really talked on Skype every single day. Every single day after work, I would call him up and we would talk. And I think that's what's saved us really. So that there wasn't that break in, I was living that different life and then suddenly he joins into that. He doesn't know what's going on, right? He already knew sort of what I was doing every day and how I was adapting. So that helped us a lot. That said, when he did finally made his way into London, he was obviously going through that same process for himself. So I found myself being quite annoyed sometimes and be like, oh, that's obvious. Oh, I know that, right? I know that already because I've done this a month before, but he's only catching up right now. So we had a bit of that timeline issue. But again, talking through it and I think our emotions, I guess that's the psychologist in me and be like, we need to talk. Just helped us a bit, or I'd like to believe that it did. And so I think when people are moving, and I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of really difficult stories, right, through the pandemic. I was in my global mobility role through the pandemic. So there were lots of people that I helped who were planning the move abroad to join their partners, right, or move the whole families over into London. And for various reasons, that was stopped, right, because the visa didn't come through, and then the visa took 6 months or 8 months or a year to come through. And so they were suddenly apart because one partner could make it into London for the new job and the other one couldn't join them. So these kinds of stories, I think I have so much appreciation and awe for people who've gone through that, because that was not easy. And I think the only thing that could have gotten them through that is the communication and the constant connection that they would create, even though they're in different places on the planet. So I'd say if I was to go for one, that would be it. Communication.
Yeah, and it comes in every single interview I have, actually, that communication is the key, especially when you are on long distance, talking every day is so important. And also I know of couples who were on long distance and they have challenges of one partner not communicating. And then usually that's kind of a sign that the things are not going so well. Because I think if you are in long distance relationship, you really need to show up for the relationship and talk to the person and let him or her to go into your life, even if you are far.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
yeah, I also love that you mentioned that your partner moved a bit later on, and then you were seeing what he was going through. And I had just a small follow-up question on this one. Is I think this is quite common challenge as well for intercultural couples, is when they maybe both they're from two different countries, but they move to a third country, which is not a hometown of a home country to any of those. And one, usually the scenario is that one has a job and the other one doesn't. So if I was wondering if you can think of any tips or anything you can think of, how to what can support these couples when one is working and is already like in the midst of creating new life, and then the other partner is at home and is struggling. And this was actually also why my previous relationship failed, is because we agreed to move together when I find job in Zambia. And then my ex-partner, he didn't join me, because I can understand now he was worried about having no job and so on. But I think this is quite big issue. So uh,
Mm.
if you have something which you would recommend, or which you came across in your experience as a coach.
I think I can think of one particular couple that I think have done a lot of good things. So I'll use them as an example. Um, the guy moved to London. His wife followed his job opportunity, right? And the plan was she'd find a job here in London. Um, the job market at the time wasn't that great. But what he's done is we're working together with the guy. So I was moving him within my company. What he's done, I think, well, is to include her in his life, right? So if there were things that he could bring her to and introduce her to her co-workers, or to any like events that he was going to, he would do that. So it wasn't like, oh no, I have a life, you don't, kind of thing, which could happen. I think just continuing to live that life together, if that makes sense, um, I think was what worked for them. And I think that is probably a good idea. And again, I mean, communication is still the basis for this. Like if she didn't tell him how she felt, like if it was difficult for her and she would pretend that everything is okay, that's not helpful, right? Because then he's like, okay, then I can focus on my career. But if he knows, or if he knew in this case, like if he knows that you're struggling, if you need extra help, or if you need the support, then you'll get it from a loving partner. You should be able to get that support, right? And if you need him to prioritize an evening at home with you or something, or like a sightseeing of London together or something, instead of doing a work event perhaps, then that's the kind of choices that people have to make, right? But I think as long as you're in this together, that's the key thing, and also, I guess one other thing that sort of came to my mind right now is like thinking about scenario B, like what not necessarily how long do you give yourself, but kind of what are your indicators of success in a way. I know it's like a very structured thinking, but in a way you might want to say stop at some point, be like, no, this actually wasn't a good decision. So what are the things that where would you be in this position to say, actually no, we should move somewhere else, or maybe we should move back, like, it's been 6 months, I'm not feeling it, or whatever. So like having that conversation about plan B, I think, could also be useful, so that you're in this all together. So for
Mm.
good and a bad, whether it works out or not, or maybe
Yeah.
not, and that's a different discussion, right? But if you are making the decision to move together, I think that's important to talk about both sides of it, right?
Mm.
And I think it was the same for us, even though we're not intercultural couple, right? But we're interpersonal couple, as any couples are. And I think
Yeah.
when two people in the picture, you always have to take both needs into consideration.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this, and I just want to emphasize it a bit. It's the joint responsibility that both in the couple should accept, that this was a joint decision, and even if the one maybe without a job will have it harder in a way, it's still important to accept this decision that we decided as a couple. We moved to this country as a couple to avoid kind of blaming later on, because I heard that many times, that, oh, I'm here just because of you, I left my job. Maybe I also did it a bit in past when I moved to Uganda following my partner, so also I'm learning from myself. But it's really important to acknowledge that we have decided this, we are both adult, and I knew I'm leaving my job, I'm leaving my income behind, and I'm doing it. And just to kind of be strong enough to resist, to throw the blame on the other partner when the things are not going the way you were expecting. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
add that.
No, that's very good. I'm glad that you pulled it out as well. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I think essentially it is two decisions of two adults that are deciding to do something. You're not forced into doing anything. I mean, yes, life happens, right, and life sort of forces you into making certain choices. But I think essentially, if you know what you're moving towards, that's what can keep you motivated to fighting for that new life in the new place,
Mhm.
right? You need to know why you've done that and be comfortable with the decision, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing about your personal life as well as about your experience as an expat coach. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And before we end up, I wanted to ask in case women are watching and maybe they are moving to a new country and they said, "Oh, I want Marta as my coach," where they can find you.
Yeah. So easiest way to reach me is on Instagram at Project Abroad Blog. Because I can respond to DMs, we can have a chat, see if we're good at match. If not, you can still follow me for advice and stuff. I'm kind of the person where you like, we need to have a good match, right? And there's lots of coaches out there. So you can choose the one that fits your needs, fits your whatever qualifications you want to have in a coach. And I'm all about a conversation at first. And if you want to read some more of my thinking and my views, I suppose, you can go to my website, which is projectabroad.eu.
Yeah, and I will put the website as well as your Instagram handle in the description of the video, so anybody who is watching can reach you there. Or also, if you are watching and have any question, feel free to write your question in the comments. We will be happy to hear from you. So thank you so much, Marta, again for your time and for sharing and being open with us. I think it was very interesting. So I wish you a great day, saying hi from Zambia to London.
Indeed. I love how we can just do that as well. Like just talk across the world. This is just so great that the world opened up in a way so much. So I really appreciate it. And I love hearing stories from your channel as well.
Yeah, so thank you. And everybody who were watching, feel free to write any comments or watch other videos with other interesting interviews with women in intercultural relationships or other topics related to multicultural relationships. So have a great day, everybody, and thank you. Bye, Marta. Hello, everybody.